Well, yeah,
You want me to mention the thing that
I was gonna say Kirby has,
Yeah.
I understand a clarification.
Yeah.
For the bona fide.
So are we live?
We are.
Okay, so I talked to Kirby, and he suggested, one of the issues seems to be the bona fide landlord tenant relationship thing is for some people is vague. So he suggested some language that was the language that is used for the property transfer tax to provide clarity. And that defines it more. So once Kirby that's his thing. Yeah. He can read it. And it is consistent with other tax policy. And avoids the concern that you had about the
Rental.
what does it mean? It provides the tax department with a lot of options to verify the landlord tenant relationship thing.
I didn't realize I was blocked by Zoom, so. To relocking. Yeah, so I can start talking about it while I log in. Senator Hardy had asked for me to share language from the part of H 933 that was the clarification around the loophole for the new transfer tax rate. There was the language added there that was related to having a bona fide landlord tenant relationship, except in that case, in both cases, again, as before, but I'll say again, both of these suggestions for language relating to the bona fide landlord tenant relationship came from the Department of Taxes. Except for the PTT, there was some additional language that was included that kind of fleshed out what that means. I don't think that there's a lot of risk, a challenge saying that this is too vague or ambiguous with, but it would help if you had that extra defining, clarifying language that, if there ever was a challenge that it's vague or ambiguous, you would have that. So I don't see it as a negative at all to add. And so what I'm going to share is the version of this that Senator Robin Hinsdale had suggested at one point, where she asked me to include that clarifying information. So not all of this would be taken in, but it would be, at the bottom of that, at the third subdivision where it says bona fide landlord tenant relationship, it would say that. And then it would say, to make this determination, the commissioner may consider whether the landlord and tenant are related parties, whether the landlord charges the tenant fair market rent, whether the landlord is an entity with a business purpose other than the avoidance of tax, and any other factor the commissioner deems relevant. So this should sound familiar because it's similar to a version we looked at that Senator Rob Hinsdale had pitched earlier. Except this would just be added to what you have, and it would not be replacing the 6-month requirement.
Okay, it would be the bona fide, it would just be added as it is there.
Yeah, and this is the language that's in miscellaneous tax.
This is adapted from the transfer tax. It would be the same language as what's used in the transfer tax.
So that, does anyone have a problem with adding that? Okay. I'm not seeing any thumbs down, so I think that is a good alternative.
Okay.
Thank you, Kirby.
That is helpful. Okay. Jake, is there anything we should know at this point from tax? Have we done anything that sends red flags up for your shop yet?
Jake Feldman, Tax Department. I had to step out a minute to bring my kid home. The only thing I know of is the bona fide.
Yeah.
That's the only thing we've changed today. I think the one issue that we hadn't resolved fully was the multiple 5 units or more question. And I know that tax has an opinion about it, and the House has an opinion about it. I have an opinion, but I also don't want to go down more rabbit holes. But I think that, while I understand your concerns and hear you about it, I think that the house language allows for, a multi-unit building, and there are some, I mean, I was in South Burlington, unfortunately, this morning for a dental thing, and there are like huge apartment buildings there that, you know, a lot of, they can be multiple things, huge for Vermont, by Vermont standards, and they could have multiple different
3
units.
stories.
Yes, 3 stories. It's like giant. And I just be concerned about if we don't require the differentiation between long-term and short-term, that there could be some
More slippage.
exactly. So I think at this point, I'm more comfortable with the house language and allowing tax time to sort of work out maybe some of the paperwork that might be necessary for that. And if it continues to be an issue, to come back and say like, okay, we can't do this, but in the meantime, I think keeping the language the house has is
Okay, Sandra.
I'd also be curious from tax's standpoint, having looked at the language, given the number of short-term rentals that we might have that would be subject to this, is this creating a burden on the tax department that you're capable of rising to at this point without additional resources?
We've been pondering the resources question. It doesn't start for several years. So that gives us some time to understand exactly what we need, but we are going to need more people. The homestead declaration processing now is pretty resource intensive, and this is adding many more dwelling attestations. And the information that the tax department is going to have to hand to towns is going to get quite a bit more complicated. The appeals from property owners are going to get quite a bit more complicated. So yes, more resources coming.
Well, I guess the question that I've got, of course, is, you know, what are we talking about in terms of a return on investment, if you will, based on what we might get out of it? Are we going to spend more trying to administer it than we're going to get out of it? 1, 2, time. Given what you're anticipating, given the burden being placed on you, how does it affect both the resources in terms of staff, but how does it also affect the time in terms of responsiveness to the customers? And I'm sure it's probably something that you've calculated at this point, but maybe you have. I'm just curious.
We haven't, and also, I would defer to somebody like Andrew Stein, who's the chief operating officer and who's been kind of tracking this more closely. He could come back with a better answer than I could give. Return on investment, it depends on what the tax rate is. The base of second homes, we did try to quantify it at the end of the second homes report that we submitted to this committee. But could be, I think it was like 1/3 of all non-homestead property is potentially second homes.
Mm-hmm.
So if you charge an extra 1/4 of 1 penny, then that's not much of a return. But it's obviously it depends on what the rate charged is.
I think that's it until we do that assessment and find out what is out there. We could all be surprised. We don't know what the return is going to be, and that at that point, again, we will have another decision point. Is what we're likely to gain worth what it's likely to cause, and the ill will and everything else that goes with it.
So we don't want to wait to be in a situation in which we pass something that has a tax associated with it before we've taken the time to figure out what it's going to cost us and whether or not the return on investment is justified.
Well,
That needs to be done in a simultaneous process.
Well, until we do, well, I'm sure tax is looking at what it's going to cost them. What's out there to do now is everybody's grand list needs to be updated. Once that's done, then we will know what the potential tax base is, both for short-term rentals and for
And
second.
we really don't know in terms of these rentals by the month
Right,
that they aren't even being calculated at this point.
But to Senator Brock's concern, what gives me peace of mind is the timeline that I think the tax department is also comfortable with. So I think the next seated legislature will have plenty of time to address these concerns with more.
Before
information.
something goes into effect.
Yes.
We find that. Yeah, I hope that's correct, but I mean, it's just something we have to keep in mind.
we have 30 or 31 now,
But-
and it's
but-
29, 31, and the dates are a few years out.
And I think if I heard you correctly, I read the report, but it was now 4 months ago. When I read it. Was almost or more than a third of non-homestead properties could potentially be second homes. Is that what you just said? It was the estimate from that report.
I think, and I could go look at it real quickly, but I think it was roughly a third of the non-homestead base. So
Yeah.
if the tax base for non-homestead is 600 billion, then a third would be 200 billion is potentially.
That's a significant portion of the non-homestead base. And so, you know, I think the question of whether the juice is going to be worth the squeeze is that there's enough of a fruit there to squeeze.
Go forward, and how much we need to squeeze.
Okay, right, exactly. Like
Right now,
how
we're
much is
looking at covering the cost of the homestead income sensitivity and taking that cost out of the tax rate. But I'm sure we could be persuaded to cover some of the cost in the tax department with doing that. I mean, once we have numbers that are a lot harder than they are, and we will be able to make decisions. But until we do that, it's that everybody's estimating based on estimates, which gets dangerous,
estimate.
which is dangerous.
Well, we'll have
Okay.
the room in the empty garage spaces and other V-Trans trucks to house the new employees if we get to the tax department.
I hadn't thought about that.
Randy. But would that be their second home or their first home?
Takes a while to get used to Randy's sense of humor.
Wait, you haven't had it
Delivered with a perfectly straight face.
Is it time to review what I have so far and do you know if that's what
Think
she wants?
So, and I think
I'm ready to move this bill out.
Well, I
Well, we
think,
have to
that-
see
yeah,
what's
we've
in
got
it.
a bunch of
Just tell you I'm ready to
amendments
go.
that we've talked about. So
Ready
it
to go.
might be helpful to start. Is it section 30 that our jurisdiction starts on?
Well, there was that tax department request that was in section 18A, the calculator.
Oh,
That
yeah.
has to be deleted. And then,
Okay.
and then the changes start at 30. I have a change, that corrected some language and a cross reference, which is more of a housekeeping thing that I brought up. So you have the language change there. This is just to make sure that when it comes to RADs, that there's not the ability for a taxpayer to skip the RAD appeals board. Because
Okay.
the language as written was, a bit confusing about that. So there's a clarification fix on that.
Okay.
This is posted, it's not that I'm looking at it. Kirby Keegan and that.
Wait, is this was that under paragraph B? No, that was under A.
Section 30, it's under, section 3420 though, because there's multiple sections within section 30.
Okay, I have a note
This is for
in
RAD.
there that says appeals board establishment, and I had a note about replacing the BCA.
It does replace the BCA.
Okay, that's what it does, because further on, we want to make sure you don't bypass the BCA.
Which is going to be the RAD appeals board in this case, yes. You don't bypass, that's what this changes.
Okay, and that's the
You do bypass in cases, the subsection D reference here.
Yeah.
Is to say that, is to recognize that you do bypass when it's an appeal of evaluation that's done by PBR.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But you don't, when this was on the section on Lister mistakes.
No, it's not that, but we'll get to that.
Okay,
I do have that removed in here.
okay, let's keep going. I'll be quiet.
So for the transition language, this was the department requesting that subsection A, which is the moratorium for mass reappraisals, that those provisions be removed. So this is what section 53 would look like with the moratorium parts removed.
53, okay.
We're jumping to 53. You're doing this
Yeah.
in order, yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay,
Let's check and make sure. Okay, yep. You're deleting 1, 2, and 3.
Subsection A is removed, and then what was subsection B becomes the entire thing, but technically subsection A.
Yeah. Okay,
okay, I've got those crossed out.
Yeah.
All right,
Section 55 is the municipal reimbursement for abatement. That's deleted.
that's deleted, okay.
Again, out of concern that that could be potentially used as a way to bypass the entire appeals process. And the state would have no control over those
Okay,
abatements. Section 56 is deleting the section on valuation guidance for limited equity cooperatives based on testimony from DBR that they are doing this and would prefer not to have something added to statute.
okay,
yep.
In section 58, property tax classifications, I have under non-homestead residential, the inclusion of the licensed lodging establishments as being automatically excluded from non-homestead residential.
And you're gonna add the PTT language in 4A.
Yep, it's not in this, obviously, too strongly about it, but yeah, I would add that under there's 4A and then subdivision 3,
Small I, 3 small I's.
3 I's.
luminous.
Yeah, the
I
Romanettes.
need Roman eyes. I would
Romanet I.
What does, yes,
look a good
Allison
policy.
has a way of pronouncing
Yeah, so that clarifying language would be added here. So next time you see this in amendment form, it will be there.
Okay,
I have subsection G, which was the classification appeals, which needed some work to be fleshed out. So you made a decision just to remove sub G for now.
I have that was to replace it with a report.
Yep, that's this.
Oh, okay, perfect.
A new section 55A, which is the report. It says, on or before December 15, 2027, permanent taxes will submit. You think you had told me, by the way, January 2028, but I do know that the House prefers those to come in before the session starts. So that's okay. I put December 15, 2027.
okay,
Department of Taxes shall submit recommended legislative language to the House Committee on Ways and Means and Senate Committee on Finance, establishing a process for an agreed taxpayers to appeal a local or state determination affecting the tax classification of the taxpayer property under the tax classification section as established by this act.
okay.
Mhm.
And that is all.
And that is, okay,
Okay, that's in this section.
Those are all the changes that I have for all of my sections.
Okay,
This is what the committee had told me last Thursday. We'll do the change that you told me today. Are
right.
we done?
Okay. that's,
And John has
Yeah.
John has something.
Just mine.
for school construction.
I sure do.
Kirby, did you have something that I was trying?
Yeah, do you want me to?
Sure, tell them what it is,
Just thinking.
and I'll see if I can fix it.
This would be a change relating to tax sales Because for some reason we just talk about that every year.
Oh, yeah.
This is now my,
timeline for those?
my eighth of a, no, this is my eighth of an acre, 20th of an acre campsites that got sold in the 70s or 60s. And they're going delinquent every other year over in Warren. This is, I'm forgetting the name.
Alpine.
Alpineville. And they have to get up to, I think we've got somewhere around $1,500 in overdue taxes
That's a big
before they can go to tax sale. They can never clear these things off of their rolls. So they're asking if we could find some way to help them. Apparently these things are in estates and
This looks beautiful, Kirby. Thank you for doing this.
yeah.
So as background, the tax sale statute has changed recently. At this point, a municipality can't start the process for a tax sale until at least $1,500 is due in taxes and fees combined, and the person's been delinquent for at least a year. This adds a new subdivision saying that the $1,500 minimum requirement does not apply if the parcel has no dwelling capable of habitation on a year-round basis, or the parcel was not declared as part of a homestead pursuant to section 5410 of this title. So in those cases where the idea is mostly this is vacant land, if it's vacant and less than 1,500 is owed, the tax sale could proceed. It still requires the 1-year delinquency.
One question I have though. Sorry, Madam Chair.
No, I think GovOps did this originally.
Yeah, we did this originally, but my question is that the dwelling, no dwelling capable of habitation on a year-round basis. We did discuss earlier that it is allowable and there are in existence some homesteads that are not capable of year-round basis, but people declare them as a
And
homestead.
that's why the second part is there.
But it's an
It's not-
or shouldn't it be an and?
Provided the parcel has, so either, or means either one of them would mean that,
Or was not declared as a homestead. Okay, so if it was declared as a homestead, this couldn't happen.
yes.
Okay, got
The
it.
goal of that was to keep towns from being
That's
able
John.
to sell people's homesteads out from under them.
How dare you? What did I do?
As far as I know, there are no homesteads on this.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure it didn't mess with somebody who was declaring.
Living in a
homestead.
shack
But,
that,
yeah.
but that's their home. Yeah,
Okay.
Yep.
Okay,
okay.
So do you want this included?
If no one objects, it will stop me from getting a lot of emails. Thank you.
no, really not like that.
Let's go to John's amendments. I don't know, Beth, do you have any amendments from us?
Not from, not yet.
That's a good answer.
Wait, you, Beth, having any amendments?
I asked if we had asked her to draft any. I know John is doing.
School district. There's the one that I handed you in paper. I don't know if
Oh,
Beth
oh,
drafted
we haven't
that or-
even
Oh, no,
discussed
John
that.
drafted it.
John drafted it. All right,
You want me to send that to Charlotte?
all right.
Sure. You know which one I'm talking about?
Yes.
Okay.
Let me see if I can find it. All right.
It's a feel like it, Martin. Let me show it to you.
Oh, yes.
John Gray, Office of Legislative Counsel. It's gonna take me a few seconds to,
That's okay.
Yeah.
We're gonna get through this. I would like to vote 727 out if possible.
Let's go with this one.
I'm gonna give the drafters time to put this all into one
Draft.
draft.
Yeah.
So that, and everybody have time to read the one draft.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we will get it out of here. What are the committee conference tomorrow
at 4,
and 4,
and then Friday at 9.
Friday at 9, okay.
Is that for the same bill?
Yield the miscellaneous, yield the miscellaneous. But I think they're all gonna have to move together because there are so many moving parts in here.
This is the school construction part is what you're trying to follow up right now.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm just catching up on
That's
a bunch
okay.
of things and just sent to Charlotte, so hopefully it's. And do you happen to have a Zoom link?
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'll wait a minute before I get done.
The Zoom now.
Hopefully, Boyd, I'm gonna vote this bill out, move this along in the process, and I'll probably vote for it on the floor. I don't think that this bill's ever gonna come into law as it is. I do have reservations, and the only reason why I'm gonna vote yes today is because of the timeline and the contingencies. I feel like that gives enough time for the next legislature to fix the issues that I have with this bill. And I'll also just say I do not support the trajectory of this foundation formula. I hope it never becomes law. But I'm gonna move this thing on because that's where we are, and I don't think we can fix it in this committee today.
Okay.
And I'm just looking for that draft to proceed.
Should be this is.
Well, I think I'm gonna let this ride till tomorrow. You know,
This week, if you can.
if I can get it out today, all right, if no one needs it.
The amended part is on the
Yeah.
second page.
Yeah, the happy news I would
Okay.
offer is that both the underlines and ed provisions and the school construction sections, but for one section, have been separately edited. So it's a matter of compiling, but the editing that would be required should be less than you might expect from a very large
Okay.
package.
That's the thing I want to add.
Okay, I'm pulling it up now. That's me.
And this, oh, there is 500.
That's me.
All right.
Okay, so I'm happy to do this however you would like. I know that with Kirby's sections, you were kind of going through the whole of the pieces, so I'm happy to do that way. Another way to do this is to start with the new piece that you guys haven't seen because you've already seen most of this.
I think,
Okay,
I was gonna say, what about just doing a high level, like what has changed
yeah,
from original?
okay, so I will just, this, if you don't see highlighting, that's as passed by the House. So I'll just talk about high level, the highlighted language, and then when we get to green highlighted, you will know that there's something new, and it will be at the very end. So you'll know. Thanks, Jim. And my trackpad is messed up, so it's hard for me to scroll. Section 66, this does a couple of things. This provides an appropriation for the full staffing of the school construction division. And then it requests AOE to come back next year with a request for appropriate funding levels for all positions required. This provides kind of the minimal staffing that was identified in that report.
and
They
it's
may
in the
need
budget.
more. There is, my understanding, and maybe Senator Hardy can speak better to this, but my understanding is there's 1.5 million
Yeah, and Julia can correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that the House version of the budget includes 1.4 million for educational transformation, and they've allocated it to various things. This doesn't change that. The Senate version of the budget added another 1.5 million. So this is using 500,000 of the 1.5 million that's in the Senate version.
Okay,
It hasn't been allocated except for in this draft.
so if we do it, it's going into the budget committee of conference, right?
It's already in the budget, I believe.
The money
Yeah,
is for
so-
the allocation.
So Julia Richter, JSO, Senator Hardy's correct. So we're talking about sort of two pots of money, both of which exist within the budget, right? So one is the section C-103, which is amending the education transformation appropriations from last year. And that those uses of that appropriation are being amended in the Senate Ed, or whatever you want it, the sections, I forget the section, but not the sections this committee has been working on. The Senate construct of the budget had an additional 1.5 million of one-time general fund that they set aside for education transformation that nothing has touched. The Senate Ed didn't contemplate touching or didn't land into place of touching those funds, nor has this committee thus far. So this funding is this is the funding of the positions. This would be using one-time money of 500,000 from general fund in FY27 that is accounted for in the Senate construct of the budget. The question of course, the budget is conferencing right now.
They would have to
It's-
approve the appropriation.
And this is one of those pieces where all of these bills this session are interconnected. This is another place where the bills are interconnected.
Yeah.
Okay, but there is free money. We don't know what they've done with it in the committee of conference, but we're going to tell them that this is what we want them to do with it.
Yeah, and Andy Senator Perchlik is aware of, or at least I told him, whether he remembers, I told him about this.
Well, we'll give them a bill.
Yeah,
Okay, because the agency did say they needed the staffing enabled to even start doing
Yeah.
anything on school construction.
they came in and told us.
Okay, so
So this section addresses immediate and long-term funding for the staffing of these positions. 66A, this is the other 1 mil program. So 1 million appropriated to the school construction aid special fund. One of the permissible purposes of the fund is to award grants to facilities master plan grant program. This would be just to SUs for the development of educational facilities master plans as part of the study committee process created in section 13.
okay, so this gives them some, we told them to go do a facilities plan and no money. So this provides money to do a facilities plan, which would be part of that merger discussion.
Yeah, it's part.
What will it take? Okay.
Yeah.
Rehab, rebuild, new build, whatever.
Yep. SU level vision is the idea from, kind of broader vision for the facilities master plan grants. Section 67, updates to the school construction aid rulemaking. High level, this is pushing back the date essentially a year to give the agency more time and being a bit more specific and direct as to what is intended by developing these bonus incentives and prioritization points. This rewards school districts for consolidating school governance structures, which could be through that study committee process. And then pretty dramatically increasing the specificity to improving access for public school students to excellent educational opportunities. That's to align with the language you've received from Senate Ed, including CTE, shared special ed, improved comprehensive curricular offerings. And then increased specificities for 1 and 2, and then a new piece here. Those rules for prioritization points and bonus incentives should reward school districts for remediating or eliminating health and safety issues.
Okay. That gets us some money into the other. Okay,
Section 68, this is the advisory board report. You'll recall from the House, this was to identify opportunities for school construction kind of loosely across the state, figure out configuration of those different opportunities that could potentially be included together. This narrows down the ask of the advisory board. It says identify 3 to 5 feasible opportunities for the construction or renovation of regional high schools to promote the consolidation of, and then it uses the call out we just talked about. So it's narrowing from identify all these opportunities. Maybe they aren't consistent, come up with different state configurations. It's just saying identify 3 to 5, hopefully to fit, I think, more within the scope of what the advisory board could handle. And then 2 was previously to provide a final study, which could be taken to be potentially more intensive. So the language update here is to be a preliminary setting study again. So all of these changes are to increase specificity and reduce the demands on the advisory board.
Okay.
Section 68A, this is to clarify essentially that there is not a revenue stream for the state aid program that goes effective this summer. So it's the intent to clarify that the state shall not operate under the program until a host of conditions are met. You've received that treasurer recommendation on what the debt service subsidy and annual bonding support would be. Agency has operationalized that school construction division that you just saw the appropriations to fully staff. And also that the General Assembly has committed to a stable funding source, which may be state bonding support. I think all of these are kind of implicit already, but it's nice to spell it out so that folks aren't hanging their hats on thinking they're suddenly getting school construction aid on July 1st of this summer.
And it's free.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. Nobody pays for it, it just appears. I think we can skip past this. Okay, the updates you're going to see to this section, which is the core school construction section that sets out the aid, are related to sequencing is the first thing you're going to see, which we've talked about this. Oh, sorry, I was wrong. On page 11, the first thing you're going to see, and we've talked about this previously, but to impose a bit more of a restriction on the eligibility conditions to access aid. We've talked about how level of proficiency in the district quality standards is a self-assessment. This is to say that the applicant needs to demonstrate proficiency, so a bit higher burden to access aid. This is the piece that my colleague Mike O'Grady wrote, was traveling in a separate ed bill related to PCBs. And so this was to try to, I think this came through, but this was language to add as an eligibility condition that if you fall into this bucket, your school district has a school building that was constructed or renovated before 1980, that you've completed indoor air quality testing, PCBs.
I think that was not a requirement anyway.
There is an element related to assessing environmental hazards, but I think this was from a bill that was otherwise changing the way that PCB testing was occurring.
Just trying to hide.
Yeah, we're not going to build an addition on a school that's breathing unhealthy air and stuff you've got.
Section 3, you see highlighted current law, well, what will be current law this summer. This is the sequencing problem that I think is solved in this draft. We had talked about how you're not going to know your aid package, but you'll recall that I previously spoke about how the ballot would go out. You'd take a vote prior to the supplemental district spending. So there will be authorization for funding. It's just that the bond will not have been issued at this point. So you could meet these conditions even though you have not issued a bond. And just to remind you, the reason you can't issue a bond is you need to know the state aid if you're getting state bonding support to know what your local bonding should be.
Technical adjustments.
This is the same sequencing solution at final application. It's clarifying what is already implicit. Yes, you voted the funds or authorized the bond, but you shouldn't issue that bond until you know what it is bonding support.
If any.
These are the big changes to the award of construction aid section, starting bottom of page 14, leading on to page 15. What you received from the House had 50 to 95% as the range. This does 30 to 75%, so it lowers the base amount of the award. And then sub B highlighting again is reflecting a change against the House that you can't see here, which is that the sequencing problem on the House side was solved here in B, and the proposal was that funds wouldn't be released until you would receive your state aid package. You don't need to do that anymore. Small update, I say small. So this is an update to that treasurer report on the appropriate annual total state bonding support and annual debt service subsidies. This is to make it an annual recommendation. I could see the thinking going either way on this. As you can imagine, the level of annual total state bonding support you could provide will change based on the CDAC recommendations, at least biennially. So you would need to know that. But I also don't know if the House's intent was just to say, we're gonna find out a long-term plan for this, and that's gonna be set in statute. The reason I raise it that way is you can imagine that if you varied this every year, it would be hard to maintain
Yeah.
the support that you provide to districts. Anyway, this would give you it on an annual basis. So at the very least, you're going to receive the most up-to-date information on how you might impact the credit rating for doing this. Section 74. Okay, this is something I especially want to flag because it has drafting implications for one of Beth's sections. It's not Beth's sections, one of the sections that Beth has drafted. Section 74 is the legacy debt aid piece. This under the House construct was 100% school construction aid for legacy debt as of the end of last year, December 31st, 2025. This has been changed to have both a condition, an eligibility condition to access the aid, and the percent of aid that you would receive. So you see the condition in A, school district shall be eligible to receive legacy debt aid only if the district is not identified as a bad faith participant in the facilitator report in the act. So if you want this, we need to add a line to the section 15 report that says the facilitator will make a determination if someone in fact is that the district was a bad faith participant. The idea is to create a default state where you're kicked into legacy debt aid, but essentially if you misbehave and you're called out in this report, you would become ineligible to receive
Okay,
legacy
so
debt
you're
aid.
just holding down a seat and not participating.
I don't know what the determination would be.
Okay,
Yeah,
now I know the House did away, covered legacy debt, they paid it.
They did 100%.
Yeah, this Senate, how does this differ
Senate,
from what was in
Senate Ed
Ed?
just stripped out the section, so they did not have any legacy debt paid.
Okay.
The other change I
And
should,
put some legacy, possibility of legacy debt.
Yeah, it makes it
in.
equivalent to what the new debt is. So you can't
Okay.
get more than what you would get if you're doing new under the new program. But it also says that you can't be a bad faith participant. And I know that John and I went around and around to me trying to find language that would work. Like good faith participant is in some ways harder to define than bad faith participant. So
and if you say that someone has to be a good faith participant, but to me, the way I think of it is you create a default state where no one gets legacy debt aid until you're determined to be a good faith participant in the report, which would mean that the facilitator would need to actively determine for each district that.
and that's a lot.
In this case, you're asking less of the facilitator. It's default state as you're kicked in. But if they do determine based on the information they receive that you're a bad faith participant, you're kicked out.
We're not gonna pay your legacy debt. If no way, no how, are you gonna consider merging, being in a safe,
Yeah.
just there to get the legacy debt?
Yeah, or if you never show up or.
You never should.
Another big distinction to note that won't be obvious on the page is that in the House construct, while there's no revenue source for it, the legacy debt aid provisions were effective July 1 of this summer. This is not effective until contingencies are met and the foundation plan is rolled out. So this would be years away.
Okay.
Never.
Yeah, we're gonna pay it down. All right.
And you can see here the change to the percentage, right? Eligible school districts, legacy debt aid shall equal 75% of debt service cost. Of that is approved and for which construction has begun. So there's yet another condition added here.
We're not gonna pay it until you put shovels in the ground.
Well, it's actually even stronger than that. It's conditioned that as of December 31st, 2025, you both need to have approved it. So I think that there were
And dug
folks.
the hole.
Had begun construction.
Exactly, because I think there are some districts that maybe approved in advance of December 31st, began construction, but hadn't issued the bond. They would be kicked in because they've approved and begun construction.
And,
Yeah. Sub C is just setting the maximum total annual amount. Again, the way I did this was just multiplying the $61 million figure that had been the 100% coverage to produce this dollar figure. That's 75%. Okay. Other new pieces, section 77A, we went through this relatively quickly some day that I don't recall when I spoke about this. And this is trying to solve the problem of the sequencing and how do you ensure that folks are seeing the total bond amount they might face in advance of doing their supplemental district spending vote. So this is trying to solve that sequencing problem. We have an existing section of law that addresses the ballot language for.
Why do we go to an X on ballot instead of filling a vote? Like now?
I don't know that. Sorry. Yeah.
That's
I
probably
needed
a
a question.
Tucker or a Tim question.
Why is there an X on the ballot?
Cause right now the scanners will not pick up an X. Oh, you have to fill in the vote.
You have to fill in the little circle.
I would assume that each town clerk kind of takes that language and tailors it to their ballot system, but I don't know.
But I don't know. It's got-
They have the capacity to, yeah, substantially as follows. So in existing law, we have ballot language for school construction. There's some cleanup changes to reference AOE, who would now be administered the state aid program. Some cleanup cross references to the new program. But the real piece here is a couple of things. The warning and ballot shall contain the following set forth in boldface type. Existing law says, clarifying to the voters that they're going to be on the hook, right? State funds may not be available at the time they're eligible to receive, and the district's responsible for all costs incurred in connection with any borrowing done in anticipation of state school construction aid. That's existing law. The new piece is clarifying how this interacts with the supplemental district spending tax. Funds to cover annual debt service costs shall be raised through the STS tax, and any bonded indebtedness incurred shall constitute an ongoing obligation that is not subject to annual authorization of STS. So trying to tie this together, this is what you're seeing at the time that you're authorizing bonding, not issuing, but authorizing. And then later it's going to link to the supplemental district spending ballot, and it's making clear that it's a one-time authorization for an ongoing cost to be covered through the supplemental district spending tax. This is getting a little more complicated here, but this is separate from the ballot is the thing that I would most want to stress here. Public informational hearing accompanies these discussions of school district incurrence of bonded indebtedness. So current law says at that hearing, a school board needs to distribute a written estimate of certain things, percentage of the cost of improvements that would not be eligible for school construction aid. And the new piece that's added is to try to help voters understand at the time that they're authorizing the bond, which is going to be before they've seen or could even know what the supplemental district spending tax they would face is. So at that informational hearing, a written estimate of the estimated SDS tax rate that would be required to pay those annual debt service costs under different aid scenarios. One is if they receive no state aid. So this is if the district bore the full cost of the bond, what would they have to pay in SDS tax?
And that's what they're actually voting on, right?
Yes, what they would be authorizing is the total package. So if no aid came, that's what they would be facing. Of course, at that point, if they discovered they received no aid, they might not issue the bond.
Right.
So that would be one scenario they would receive an estimate of. They would receive an estimate of the base amount. If the district received state aid of 30%, what would their annual cost be? And if the district received the maximum state aid of 75%, what would their SDS tax rate? So trying to show a range of worst case and best case scenarios for what the district could receive tied to how state aid works. Additionally, it'd be important to note to the voters that is truly just an estimate because you don't know the figures. You may have a more reasonable estimate than you do under our current education funding system, but it's still an estimate. So the board would notify the participants of the following assumptions. You would be assuming that the SDS yield is equal to the current one. You would assume your LTM is equal to your current, and you would assume that the supplemental district spending is just what you're authorizing for the bonded indebtedness. If you chose as a district to raise a bunch of other supplemental district spending, then this estimate would be meaningless to you, right? So it's clarifying the assumptions that are built in, and then notifying the participants that the future rates will vary annually based on what the yield is, what their long-term membership is, and any other SDS that the district approves for that year. So again, this is trying to solve the sequencing problem and also trying to provide information to the voters so that they know, I think some of the thinking here was, if you just put it out without any of the information, perhaps they decline to authorize the vote because they don't see the state aid that's coming in. But you also don't want to provide so much information in the ballot itself to weigh down the vote. So-
If you haven't done hundreds of hours of community, input and output, you're never gonna pass bond. I mean, it just takes a lot of groundwork, and I appreciate this work on the ballot, but I mean, this should be just one piece of a very large puzzle. Because it takes a lot of education and
This has been,
outreach.
Yeah, speaking from experience, Day.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
okay.
Yep. So that is language that refers to the authorization for bonding for school construction. Section 78 is speaking to the ballot for the supplemental district spending. And the way that this was addressed is trying to respond to the House's challenge to distinguish between the ballot that would be used for sort of normal everyday SDS and the ballot that would specifically be used for one-time authorization of ongoing school construction costs. You have a condition that kicks you into one if the board determines that the district should raise funds to cover expenditures other than school construction. The board presents this ballot and it tells them how much they would need to pay for those, or it asks for authorization of expenditures other than capital construction. It estimates that the proposed budget would result in a supplemental district spending total of X amount, how that relates to current SDS spending, and most importantly, it would tell them the supplemental district spending tax rate. It's worth noting that this authorization, which is the default ballot, as I would describe it, it's your yearly ballot if you happen to go out and vote for SDS, would include both your ongoing capital construction costs, whatever rate is required to raise that, and whatever rate is required to raise what you've just approved. They would be included together, so it just tells the voters, this is the total rate you have to pay in the year in SDS. And then it clarifies that even if they don't approve those expenditures, the district estimates a supplemental district spending tax rate of whatever it might be to pay for any ongoing capital construction costs. So this is also clarifying in that ballot, hey, you may not approve this, but no, you're still going to be facing a supplemental district spending tax because 3 years ago you voted to authorize
To do something
Yep.
else.
E is telling you the language that's specific to the one-time authorization. If the board receives a determination of state aid prior to issuing any bonding, the board shall present to the voters for one-time authorization a budget to cover those annual debt service obligations. And it would say, shall the voters approve this amount, which is the amount the school board determines to be necessary to cover annual debt service obligations on school construction for the ensuing fiscal year, and would provide the similar estimates. It notes the converse of what we just saw in the previous ballot, that if the district separately approves any SDS outside of school construction, that would, what I just described, the total supplemental district spending tax rate provided on the ballot would reflect the rate required to cover all expenditures, including the annual debt service obligation. So that's saying that even once you've done this ballot, if you do sort of a normal SDS, the ballot we just looked at, this figure will reflect the total rate.
Okay.
Questions on that?
Yeah.
You don't have to do all these ballots all
Yeah.
the time. They're just like trying to get all the scenarios.
Okay.
Section 79, the new piece here is, this is repealing the ballot language update in Act 73 because you're replacing it with the ballot language here. We finally got to the green highlight. This is new language that you guys have not seen. This is an update to the Education Fund Advisory Committee directives. And it's a
Okay,
pretty,
this is the one you.
So what I handed out yesterday.
All right.
pretty simple to describe, I think. That's one new directive.
If people are upset.
It's now 6 or maybe 7. I think it's 7. Let's go by Webster.
No, you're fine.
It's been cut down to be, 6 members of the public, all with expertise in education finance, appointed by the Speaker, Committee on Committees, and the Governor. And then 1 representative from the Vermont School Boards Association with expertise in ed finance. So in all cases, trying to have membership that is expertise in ed finance and then not political appointee is the way that I would. Although, I mean, not,
Like all of those are political.
sorry, not, yeah, I used the wrong language. Not outright, political bodies themselves,
Oh.
representatives of, yeah, that's just me being inarticulate.
I'm like that all the time.
The new directive is, as one of the recommendations that they would make on an annual basis, they would recommend that appropriations required to fully fund each school district's EOP under the foundation formula for the current and upcoming fiscal year. This would literally be a mathematical task. You would just take the weighted long-term membership per district and multiply it by the base amount. And basically what it would say is it would, for the current fiscal year, you'd have the appropriation. So you would, it's kind of checking the work. Did the General Assembly provide the appropriation that is required to do the foundation formula? And then for the upcoming fiscal year, would say, based on the information you have today, this is what we think the appropriation would be.
Is that the group that now does the December 1st letter?
No,
No, okay,
No,
Isn't that
this is a relatively narrow.
yeah, this
okay.
This was created last year, but this, Madam Chair, you might recall, was, and Senator Brock, this was something we proposed, the Senate proposed under Act 127 during people waiting. And this was sort of part of the whole, like, check the work, make sure that there's somebody overseeing what's going on with the ed fund. That was something that we proposed. It didn't get into the final version of 127, but we put in Act 73 last year. And then the House made changes to the membership in H9 55. But this provision, it was added because of concerns I've heard from people about whether or not the legislature is going to quote unquote fully fund the foundation formula.
Okay.
So this would be this body, as John said, doing the math and saying, yes,
This is what it's gonna take.
they fully funded it last year, and this is what they're gonna need to do to fully fund it this year.
Okay.
Just to sort of ease some concerns and give a check on the legislature, I guess. And but
Okay.
Yeah.
What I'm thinking though is in order, don't you have to have legislators, or it has to be a legislative committee to get the services of JFO and joint fiscal?
This shouldn't require, I don't think, their participation. This is truly, I mean, it's a question of the access to the data that they have, I suppose.
Interpretation of it.
But this is frankly
Yeah.
something you could ask me to do, and I could pull out a calculation. Do it.
it is, they did have the. Doesn't this have the like,
And I'm gonna
or
pause.
did that get,
Let me
that
check.
get taken out? It has the.
They have the
staffing.
administrative, technical, and legal assistance of the Department of Taxes and AOE.
Yeah,
They
Okay, that should be.
should have access to the data they need.
I should miss joint fiscal on the commission of future public education. I'm used to just saying, what would that cost? And somebody can tell me. Wasn't that easy?
So like,
And then somebody else could write it up. Okay, that's
that's
it.
That's it. You have updates to the effective dates just to pick up,
Okay.
you know, like I said, the legacy Jet A piece is continually effective July 1, 2030. The section 77A, which is the new ballot language, that's the new language related to going out to incur debt. Similarly, contingently effective July 1, 2030. That's all the pieces that are in here.
Okay. Committee, I think we've been through everything.
Is there one little piece in Beth's area, just
Pat, do you have one piece?
Just what, Beth St. James Office of Legislative Counsel, just what we were talking about related to good faith participation. I've made that change. Would you like me to show you what?
Sure.
Okay. Bear with
I'm
me.
trying to figure out if I tell. Does anybody have any energy left to look at 727, or do I tell? That's the.
That's
That's-
that's all right. That's the data centers.
That's the data
That's
set.
right now.
We did.
Committee on that.
What was that?
I'm trying to even think what is this fee or tax in it?
It's the
$6 million
Back
for
to the-
the.
Oh, yeah.
The impact fee.
Always a great bill. That's separate out.
Okay.
Same number next year.
So I'm looking at steps. How long will it take
Well,
to
you
get
actually have a football team here.
the copy?
We told our drafting ops team as we were walking over that we would have something to send them potentially this evening. And like I said, the only literally unedited sections are the green highlighting you just saw, plus what Beth just did. But they'll have to, we would like for them to take a look at the package as a whole, and we'll tell them that it's urgent. I mean, that's the
Okay, considering that you think we should,
If we should vote, if we can vote tonight, I think we should.
okay,
Pending edits,
pending edits.
we do that.
Yeah, you potentially could do that given how limited the unedited sections are.
All right. So that's gonna show us hers, and then I guess we're ready for a motion.
Do you want to swap chairs?
No,
I think,
I want
well,
to.
we can't tell them not to go home, because now we're gonna bring them here.
Who's got the sheet?
Well, you need me to pull something up?
Are we to wait and
You
bring it up
the
tomorrow?
amendment.
The full.
Yes, that's where that language is from. Sorry, my
Are we doing
computer. is frozen.
We can do 727 while we're waiting for that.
Well, that's what I was thinking.
Charlotte is so good.
Who wants to make a motion? Waiting.
We're waiting.
Are we moving to 727? What are we doing?
We went through that
Are
yesterday.
you ready for a motion on that?
There is a impact fee that could,
If one's ever
on
built there.
727 from yesterday, that could raise millions of dollars, but no one will know until they get here.
This is not a very inviting environment for to build one of these data centers. If you're looking to build one, you're gonna look at a different state, so.
We had really good testimony that
It's the
actually
safe
that
version.
as long as we have a very clear regulatory structure, which this
One's a copy.
set out,
Great. Okay, I think
and
Kirby might.
people know what they're expected to do.
Ready to make a motion?
I move that we approve H 727 as approved by the Senate Natural Resources Committee.
Okay. Secretary Hardy's moved that we approve H 727. I've got draft 6.1 dated 5/8/26. Was presented to us yesterday. Sent to us by the Committee on Natural Resources. This is the one that started here. We sent it there and it came back here. So because there was a fee in it, but it really was resource management. So is there further discussion on this one? If not, clerk can call the roll to be practiced.
Senator Chittenden,
Yeah.
Senator Beck,
Yes.
Senator Hardy,
Yes.
Senator Brock,
Yes,
Senator Gulick,
Yes.
Senator Meadows, no. Senator Cummings,
Yes.
6-1-0.
Okay, who would like to report that? Senator Becker
I can,
on that?
I'm doing part of the report for Senate Natural, so I can.
Okay, well, then you can just say.
And I've been saying.
We, okay.
The new data center is going to be in Georgia, isn't
Bring it, yeah, yeah. We got a few dams in there.
That's.
All right.
I just, it's, you're not big.
Okay, that 27 is out. That only leaves us that entire board.
And there's
to
enough
get out
steps in place.
tomorrow.
It wouldn't.
If we've gotten this one out. Beth, if you got something to show us.
Dawn has something to show you on
Dawn
my
has
behalf.
something for you to show.
Yes,
Okay,
which she was doing on my behalf anyway, so it's, works out well. Section 15, this is tying to the, legacy debt aid eligibility condition that, you know. So this is part of the study committee. This is the big, I think, facilitator report. The lead facilitator on or before January 1st, 2029 shall submit a written report. House and Senate committees on education with the following identification of any school district that did not participate in the study committee, in good faith. Different way you could do this. Just depends on what you want.
Don't we have to say bad faith actor because that's how you phrased it, or does that matter?
But the list is good.
I don't,
The ones that-
Okay.
I'm in an odd position of talking about language that is.
okay.
That's the James Office of Legislative Counsel. I do not care what
Okay.
Dawn does in order to meet your needs.
I agree with Senator Hardy. I would say identification of any school district that participated in a bad faith way in the study committee.
It did
You know,
not,
something.
yeah, okay, or did not participate.
It's an act of determination that they're a bad faith.
Okay.
We're gonna have.
it
What would be
one
some
way.
examples of how they would do that?
They refuse to show up at all.
You know,
Um,
that would be a clear.
try to obstruct, participation or actively militate.
Some people would. To
Yeah.
committee or debt, for example.
Yeah. So,
It's seemed very subjective though.
I think it is subjective, but I think it is less of a determination than having for each a determination that they're a good faith participant, right? But yeah, it does grant this facilitator some broad discretionary power.
Mhm. Does it indemnify them from lawsuit for bad faith? I would think that, a facilitator would be very reluctant to do that unless there was substantial body of evidence.
I think anyone that said, you can say whatever you want, but my school's not changing anything and we're not doing anything any different, so.
Yep.
So that's a good faith representation of our district, because you guys are all wrong.
Two different ways.
Then as long as you're participating and open to information and, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
So you could also say.
all right,
It's a bad thing.
it's a
It
bad,
could be determination and identification. Yeah, maybe that's the way to go.
That was a bona
It
fide
does
fact.
take us a long time to figure out the right word.
Yeah.
If you haven't figured that
In a
out.
written
yet.
report, determination.
Senator Mathos wants to include the words bona fide in here.
Bona fide bad faith.
Examples or documentation or evidence or whatever the case may be, that you just aren't pulling it out of the air and calling them names.
Yeah,
So here's the quick thing we have. Determination and identification of any school district that is a bad faith participant in the study.
yeah, that's as good as we're gonna get right now. So I think
So that,
Well, I don't understand
you
why,
have to.
why the in good faith at the end?
oh, I'm sorry, that's just me.
Yeah.
That's me not seeing it. And that's great too, because I hate to run two words opposite line.
That's true.
this is for school construction.
This is kicking into the eligibility for legacy debt aid. Yeah,
Okay, so it's very limited. This is only the folks that
That have legacy
that have
debt.
legacy
Yeah,
debt.
exactly.
If they're saying, I got my new school, I don't care about any of the rest of you, I'm not coming to any meetings,
Yeah,
I'm just sitting here. Or they come in and they just work.
To me, exception.
yeah. But there's gotta be some check.
When, you can always change it if there's a plan.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
6-1.
So committee, are we comfortable voting on this pending edits?
Yes.
We don't? If we are, what is the draft?
It will be draft 1.1 because we haven't yet shown you a compiled amendment. I
Okay,
mean, this is the compiled amendment, so this,
you've been through all the compiled amendments.
yeah, essentially you cobbled together outside of the compiled document and reviewed those, and now they're for the first time being joined in a single document.
Anybody is not comfortable, speak now or forever hold their peace.
Oh, I'm not comfortable, but I'm gonna vote yes to move this bill along.
Only 140
We
pages.
made a vote. Somebody made a motion.
No, we do not have a motion. I'm trying to feel if we're comfortable with voting or if we'd rather wait and see the final document.
I'm comfortable voting.
You're not?
I am.
Oh, okay,
I mean, just the process of them putting it together, I'm fine with that.
okay. I think we've gone through and agreed on all the changes. Or not. All right, unless I hear someone would like to put it off, I am ready to entertain a motion.
Okay, I will move draft 1.1 of H 955. Pending edit by the legislative council staff.
What's the editors, I think, the staff, all right, pending edits. They may find a comma or a paragraph symbol. Okay. Is there further discussion? Are there any further amendments?
Do we have a motion?
We
I
have a
just made a
motion.
Oh, you did, okay.
It's just the full draft 1.1.
I'm gonna be voting no. I think this is sad. I think this is so far short of transformation and what Vermonters asked us to do, and I feel terrible for kids, communities and schools that this is what we're sending out after 2 years worth of work. I'm voting no.
Okay,
Good point.
I'm voting yes. I'm really excited about the seesaws. I think they're gonna save us some money, and from what we've seen in many other states in the country, they improve outcomes. I am really excited about that, and I also think they will lead us toward more regionalization, which seems to be what everybody wants. So I think they're gonna be multi-pronged in their benefit to the state. And we heard loud and clear that people don't want forced mergers. So that this bill doesn't contain forced mergers. I'm excited about that.
all right.
So voting yes, because it gives enough time for and contingencies for the next legislature to fix some issues and concerns that I have with it. And I do see some merit in the seesaws, and I think that do see some merit in the forced conversations as some to continue the emphasis and focus on this. But I do think this bill falls short for really addressing all of the issues, and I really don't like the foundation formula as contemplated.
Okay.
I'm going to vote yes, for the same reason that I commented the last time we were on the floor in the Senate talking about this education transformation. I'm voting yes, with great reluctance, because this is better than what we've got now, which seems to be the alternative.
Okay,
Not because I'm enthused about what we've done.
I don't think anyone is 100% happy with anything, which may or may not make it a good bill, but it is a very complex issue. And I'm going to ask the clerk to call the roll.
Senator Chip.
Hoo-ha!
It's not a
I
yes.
don't know if that's illegal.
Probably yes.
Senator Beck.
Yeah.
Senator Hardy.
Yes.
Senator Brock.
Very reluctant, yes.
Senator Hewlett.
A tepid and loudly enthusiastic yes.
Senator Mattos, no. Senator Cummings.
Yes, and it's not reluctant. I'm so glad to get it out of here.
Who's taking it?
Okay, I will be the reporter.
Okay, for the team,
Yes, I will wear my.
yes, we are adjourned.
Thank you.